A lot happened on Friday. I didn't really headline Joe Manchin there because I knew we were going to flesh this out now. But for people that may not remember or, have tried to scrub this from their memory over the weekend, Joe Manchin once again killed the Biden administration's latest iteration of Build Back Better, but it's not even that anymore. It's a reconciliation climate package that they were trying to come to an agreement on. A reminder that Joe Manchin is a coal millionaire. He takes the most money, I believe, of any senator from fossil fuel companies. It is in his own financial interests, literally, directly, that climate change is not addressed. So what a shocker. He was not interested in addressing climate change via electric vehicle funds, clean air protections. Some of the things that were being discussed and fleshed out in this reconciliation negotiation process. But this news broke on Friday. So afterwards, he goes on West Virginia radio and he basically says that he'd be open to looking at this again after the July inflation numbers come out. This is just another excuse on his list. My dog ate my homework. My cat peed on my homework. I got into some sort of accident on my bike. Like every excuse that a kid has used to get out of their homework assignment in class, Joe Manchin has used that 40 different times. And inflation is his latest hobby horse on that front. So he went on West Virginia local radio and said that he doesn't want any new taxes to address this, even though he also says the bill can't cost anything. So there's really no way to square that if you're looking at it in Joe Manchin's terms. No taxes on wealthy people, no taxes on corporations, but also this can contribute to the deficit, and there's no way for you to raise money to actually fund these programs. So, he is constantly, it's Lucy with the football, and the Biden administration keeps trying to kick the football, and they keep treating him like he is a good faith negotiator. So, but frankly, Bernie Sanders is not having that. He had a bit of a, I would say, an impatient moment, but cathartically so, when he was on cable over the weekend with Martha Raddatz on ABC. She asks him about Joe Manchin pulling out of negotiations for the reconciliation package that would include climate change provisions. And he was not really having the framing of this question.
And the agenda there. Senator Joe Manchin, of course, abruptly pulled the plug this week on the Democrats'
No, Martha, he didn't abruptly. Martha,
okay. He abruptly on Friday.
He didn't abruptly do anything.
He was negotiating for a while.
The president's agenda. No, look, if you check the record 6 months ago, I made it clear that you have people like Manchin, Sinema to a lesser degree, who are intentionally sabotaging the president's agenda, what the American people want, what a majority of us in the Democratic caucus want. Nothing new about this. And the problem was that we continue to talk to Manchin like he was serious. He was not. This is a guy who is a major recipient of fossil fuel money, a guy who has received campaign contributions from 25 Republican billionaires. You think this guy is serious?
Senator, you say he wasn't serious, but Manchin says his main goal is to do what's good for West Virginia, and he's worried about inflation. Listen to what he told the West Virginia radio station. Listen to this, please.
Is that right?
Inflation is absolutely killing many, many people. They can't buy gasoline. They have a hard time buying groceries. Everything they buy and consume for their daily lives is a hardship to them.
Your reaction to that, Senator?
Well, look, the same nonsense that Manchin has been talking about for a year. West Virginia, it's a beautiful state, and I've had the pleasure of being there. Great people. It is one of the poorest states in this country. You ask the people of West Virginia whether they want to expand Medicare to cover dental, hearing, and eyeglasses. You ask the people of West Virginia whether we should demand that the wealthiest people in large corporations start paying their fair share of taxes. Ask the people of West Virginia whether or not all people should have health care as a human right like in every other country on earth. That's what they will say. In my humble opinion, Manchin represents the very wealthiest people in this country, not working families in West Virginia or America.
And Senator Sanders, I want to end with, if these provisions don't get passed, doesn't look like they will, what does that mean for Democrats' climate goals and the climate itself?
Martha, it ain't Democrats. It isn't the president. It is the future of the planet. So.
Right. And she goes on to the mainstream press feels the need to constantly, present Joe Manchin's position as if it is in good faith. And, the New York Times had a write-up of this where they, in the top of the article, mentioned his corruption, essentially, and the fact that he is directly profiting off inaction on climate change, which is good. ABC didn't get the memo that it's acceptable to call a spade a spade. You don't have to carry water for Manchin's position on this. I mean, especially if, Bernie's frustration was hilarious. Oh, really? As they paper over his statements with the clip. But you don't have to present that position as if it's in good faith, especially when we have his track record, Joe Manchin's track record of, I'm open to negotiation, except just kidding, I have this arbitrary number that I've already negotiated with Chuck Schumer on 1.75 trillion, and I'm not going to go over that. Oh, we've reached that number. We have reached that number, Joe Manchin. Just kidding, I'm not interested in it anyway. So without all of that history and context, a viewer who's just tuning in to ABC on Sunday will think it's a good faith debate between those two sides. And that's obviously not the case. And Manchin has still yet to present an argument that inflation would be affected in any way by a standard small package addressing climate change with some incentives for electric vehicles. There's actually zero logical connection between those things, and yet he still repeats this same point all the time, because he really has no other argument. Manchin loves this. He loves killing every part of the Biden agenda and then coming out publicly to say, hey, but I'm reasonable. I'm open to negotiating, until he kills it again, because that is his brand. It's centering himself in these negotiations. It's making himself a headline in a red state where he can say, I am the last soldier against wasteful government spending, etc. And the Biden administration has essentially taken an entirely hands-off approach to selling their agenda and combating these paper-thin talking points of inflation and of government spending. It's really easy, as Bernie mentioned there, to sell this agenda to the public if you are actually engaged in doing so. And just another reminder that progressives were right the entire time. We were right on this program. Pretty much every progressive show, every progressive lawmaker in this country was right on the decoupling and passing of bipartisan infrastructure. We lost all of our leverage to do anything substantial for the American public because of these nonsense calls for, I want to win ahead of the midterms, even though this is a year in advance, and we need bipartisan infrastructure. We need it now. And the moderate centrist Democrats were pushing, and frankly, a great majority of the progressive caucus caved under the pressure, with the exception of people like Ilhan Omar, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Cori Bush, etc. So there were a select few who understood that this would be giving into exactly what Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema wanted. They wanted this bipartisan infrastructure bill. That was what you could hang over their head. And they said, oh, well, but we'll still negotiate on Build Back Better. Don't you worry. Take our word for it, as once again, we stab you in the back. Like, learn something from this. And yet, I can't wait for the next time there's some sort of negotiation process, and progressives are once again blamed for something failing, even though it's like very hard, I understand, for the press to stomach this, but it was directly the centrist corporate wing, center-right, if we're being real, corporate wing of the Democratic Party that is responsible for these negotiations falling apart, and the evidence continues to mount. So, yeah, I share Bernie Sanders' anger.
Yeah, and just a quick aside there, the only people who, if this bill was even going to make it to the House, you know the person who was spearheading the opposition to it on the Democratic side? Josh Gottheimer, because he wanted to restore the SALT tax provision. So I don't see any coordinated opposition yet from the Progressive Caucus, but for this pared down, slimmed down reconciliation bill that's also probably not even going to come to the House. But who is lining up with all their ducks in a row? Who's Josh Gottheimer to say we're not going to pass it unless we get a, upper class tax cut in New Jersey?
Literally his only, it seems to be that's his only issue, that he's a single issue voter, as they say. Honestly. Manchin says that they're going to be back to the table to negotiate Medicare, drug prices, and an Obamacare 2-year subsidizing until he does the same thing on that as well.